How many of you have seen a single person completely negative on this show? I haven't seen a single soul, and it's no wonder why. Beyond the toxicity of League, there is a story that was waiting to be told. Now we are at its sort of conclusion, and I can't wait for not only future League projects, but what this means for other video game adaptations. But there were some elements of this story that didn't get enough attention. But before I get started on everything, we're going to dive into the heart of Zaun and discover the darkest parts of Piltover to figure out what made this adaptation one of the best of all time, with Arcane. The shorter the content, the more difficult it is to world build. It's a one-to-one. But with 9 episodes, I feel like I know so much about a world that has so much more to show. All of this is just the beginning of the stories that could be told here. Piltover is just as detached as one would expect of high and mighty rulers. Not all of them contribute to the oppression of Zaun, but there is no doubt they all profit off it. Even most of the characters that haven't lived with such privilege for most of their lives are affected by the elite ruling class. Jace gets caught up in politics when his goal was to help everyone. He even removes Heimerdinger off the council because he was against the work Victor was doing to try and save his life. But a lot of his failures stem from the influence of those around him, and I'll get to that in a bit. But by comparison, we get to see a lot more from Zaun as a whole. One thing I loved alongside the show's writing was the slang they gave to various characters. I don't know what it is, but calling the Undercity the Lanes just gives the people much more of a rich history. A city's people are more than the lives they lead, or the pains they have endured, but the way they communicate their struggles, and how they interact with their world. Every time we saw Vander's old bar, The Last Drop, they always took time to show what random people were doing. Playing an altered version of pool, drinking, tinkering around with some body modifications. All 3 acts show off The Last Drop, and every time it's a fresh backdrop to explore, while the plot continues onward. Echo's hideout with the firelights, the old lab where Singed works out of, the infected water far from any of the cityscape. Each location never fails to show something new. And this is true even for places we haven't even got to see much of yet. In the final act, we are introduced to another powerful force in the world of Runeterra, Noxus, a nation that thrives on war. Everything leads to conquest, and only the strong deserve to win under their rule. Jace fell for another council member, Mel, whose mother casted her out of Noxus because of how soft she was making her be. To her, she couldn't make the harsh choices of a leader when she had a daughter that made her question her own mindset. Arcane really puts tension into this world on a grand scale, with even the outside world hoping for Piltover to wage war with Zaun. Zaun is fighting back against Piltover's oppression. Piltover is fighting back against the people of Zaun who threaten to destroy them, and Noxus is trying to tilt the scales so they can achieve more power for their war machine. When trying to world build, one of the most important elements is to make sure everything flows into one another. None of these large places exist alone, and neither does their people. This show has managed to do that and set the stage for more stories in the future, but the stories they did tell in this world already have managed to grip the minds of many. There were a lot of characters on display this season, but the one thing all the main characters had in common was their conflicts with family. In this story, the idea of family is kind of a tainted idea, with it almost always leading to ruin. Mel was casted out by her family because her mother was becoming weaker with her around, which in turn made Mel further reject Noxus ideologies. Vi and Jinx lost their family twice, and in the end were pushed further apart. Jinx began to work with Silco in his efforts to liberate Zaun, no matter how twisted his methods became. Vi has been trapped in Stillwater Prison for years, and works with an enforcer to try and find her sister. Even though Vi still cares about Jinx, she was the main force that turned her into who she has become. Just like Vander was a surrogate father for them, Silco became a father figure for Jinx in their absence. Silco in general was such an amazing character, definitely one of the better written ones in the story. His past with Vander, being betrayed by him when they once stood on the same side, his unyielding perspective on freeing Zaun from Piltover, the streets running with Shimmer, addicts are lining most of the corners. That one aspect is really what ties him to his antagonist evil role. If he wasn't constantly pushing out Shimmer to the people of Zaun, he could be seen as a mostly positive force from the viewer's perspective, though characters like Echo would rightly disagree. Even in his last moments, he proved how much he cared for Jinx, and that final display of care resonates more than the other noise. Everyone she considered family has betrayed her in some way, including him, but he was the one that proved he did truly care for her when she needed someone to be there. Vi is to blame in large part for what has happened to her sister, but it's not like everything is her fault. She did try her best to be there. But now that she's been gone, Jinx has changed. Part of her failure to reach Jinx is still seeing her as Powder, the little girl left behind in Zaun, instead of who she has become. They both have issues, and it helps make the dynamic between them so heart-wrenching. Caitlyn doesn't have as much character growth as some of the other leads, but she was always a joy to see. I loved seeing her relationship with Vi develop every episode, and her desire to actually care for both Piltover and Zaun was felt. She never knew what the Undercity was like, and now feels attached to the suffering she's now seen, knowing that Piltover's been leaving them behind. All of the main characters in this story are great, and the side characters have just enough depth to fill their roles, though I wouldn't have been against some more characters getting more light shined on them. I loved Vi and Jinx's story, but by far the two I was invested in the most were Jace and, more specifically, Victor. Their journey was great, and really shows the nuance of what progress really means. Heimerdinger represents safety, and trying to create a future with a limited scope in hopes of preventing past tragedies from repeating themselves. Jace and Victor start off both believing that progress is progress, and must be pursued no matter what, so the people can be empowered. Jace later transitions to a position between Heimerdinger and Victor, still believing in progress, but wants to first and foremost preserve the people he hopes to help. The issue at play here is what should be sacrificed for progress. Every character involved wants a better future, but each of them conflict on how that future will be reached. Victor is the most resolute in his ideals, wanting to push limits further and further for a better tomorrow. In his own case, he feels things need to advance even faster, since his body is beginning to fade away from his disease. Victor and Jace have a cathartic moment at the end of the season, with reaching the logical end of their warped ideals. Jace got caught up in politics, when he tried to bring everyone along with his vision, and Victor caused the loss of Sky when he relentlessly pushed for his Hexcore project to work.
In the pursuit of great, we fail to do good. We have to make it right.
In Arcane, the ideas of family and progress are tested. Jace and Victor have a brother-type bond between each other, and even though their ideals may differ, they still care for each other. As an adaptation, Arcane managed to not only stick to the lore, but enhance it. Originally, Victor was a bit more one-note with his ideals, but now he's given so much more to work with when writing a narrative. Making a well-rounded character is about making sure they aren't just their ideas. A character can be stern, but showing how they themselves may struggle with their own ideas helps give more moments to sympathize with. Arcane was amazing, and I can't wait for season 2. But until then, what did you think? What moment or phrase really stuck with you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't already, subscribe. It costs nothing, and you can unsubscribe later on if you want. I hope to see you next time.